This is a companion video for the one I just did on 54 excellent sciences, 18 creativity and novelty sciences, 60 models of innovation, 60 models of creativity, 420 dynamics of natural selection, 420 dynamics of Silicon Valley founders. Now, this is the companion because those plural models in that detailed hierarchy is a vast improvement in power over the academics that I compete with. And they have their one, my model is righter than your model. And I have 60 models. And I'm willing to do a competition with them anywhere, under any circumstances and win. Theoretically and practically win. My models, my repertoires of models have huge practical impacts. Their single rightish models have zero or almost no impact. And I'm talking about the best ones in the world. Harvard, Procter & Gamble, several years, millions of dollars, nothing. Copying a Japanese product 8 years later. So I can outperform those single righty models with my repertoires of models. My approach has power, intellectual power, and practical power that my competitors don't have. Now, this is a companion piece to that because where did that power come from and why do I have it and so few other people have it? It's not an accident. When I was at MIT, I read Herbert Simon's book, Sciences of the Artificial, and he talked about how each profession and person was an ever smaller slice of all the knowledge that's there because knowledge grows exponentially in every field. And so people educated in 1960 could, in a career, cover 5-8% of the knowledge in their field. People in 2000 could realistically cover 1/200th of the knowledge in their field. And so we are ever tinier slices, the people we make and the professionals we make, of the total knowledge in our fields. Not surprisingly, the world's going disaster to disaster. We are producing people and brains and ways of thinking far too narrow. And I'm talking about applying ordinary mental operators to 60 to 120 ideas in the same time period where other people apply those mental operators to 4 or 5 ideas. That's something I already achieved 40 years ago with new tools I invented while an MIT undergraduate. I studied the best people at Harvard, Wellesley, Radcliff, and MIT. I studied them thoroughly. I met them personally. I interviewed them as a sophomore undergraduate at MIT. I was just very in a dumb research method asking them, why are you smarter than me and so much smarter than me, in ways that I identified already by reading their articles and stuff. And they were flattered and a little amused at how stupid and naive I was. And they told me why they were smarter than me. And I wrote it down and I turned it into a 250-page book called Structural Cognition because I found the same thing in everybody who was smarter than me, which is they were applying the same mental operators that I had, but instead of applying it to 4 or 5 ideas at a time, they were applying in the same time period it to 60 to 100 ideas at a time. How did they do that? Well, they organized ideas in patterns that were beyond me. Now, actually, the best people I found at Harvard, MIT, Stanford, Harvard, MIT, Wellesley, and Radcliffe at the time, 1966 to 1971, that I was an undergraduate, those people were operating at 20 ideas instead of 6 ideas. So they were applying ordinary mental operators to about 20 ideas at a time, whereas in the same time period, I was applying operators to 4 or 5 ideas at a time. Now, I invented these tools while I was at MIT that allowed me to go beyond them. So I can now comfortably apply ideas to 128 to 256 ideas in the same time period where other people around me apply them to 4 or 5 ideas. Let me give you an example of what this looks like. First of all, it looks like this. This is a fractal page form. It has 64 boxes, 16, 16, 16, 16. And it's been regularized in certain ways. The names of the points have been regularized. Their ordering has been regularized. And so it's very easy to end up memorizing this with just 5 or 6 exposures to it in a 1 hour or 2 hour period. And once you've got it in your mind, it becomes 64 dimensions for thinking. A little seed, 64 different, well-ordered, highly distributed. This is a more comprehensive than other people's models, and more detailed at the same time, and multiple level. So I can be more comprehensive than other people, more widely distributed, with more variety, yet be more precise and have more accuracy and more detail than other people at the same time. Now, apply a mental operation like comparison, to this and another one of these. Apply a mental operation like inventing new somethings to this and another one of these. I can't. So when I'm asked to, well, let me give you an example. It's easier. I was at Xerox on the West Coast, Xerox Palo Alto Research Center. My vice president came there, called us together at his staff, and told us that there was a product problem. And he described in great detail, about 20 minutes, what the problem was. And I want your ideas for fixing this problem. And I want everybody to come up with their best 2 or 3 ideas in about an hour or so. I'm going to come back in the room an hour, hour and a half from now, and I want your best ideas from each of you. And so he came back. He went around the table. Fortunately for me, I was at the end of the circle as he went around the table. Everybody had their 3 or 4 or 2 ideas, and he put them on the board. And where he didn't understand, he asked, what does this you mean? So we do what? We do what? So he looked like he was really after, something that would work. And he had to get his mind around everything put on the board. And then he got to me, and I said, I have 64 ideas. I gave him one of these sheets with my 64 ideas on it. Every idea by everybody else in the room was on my sheet. Plus 40 ideas none of them had. And my sheet had far more variety than they had. And my sheet had more detail and specificity than they had. And I had done it in the same amount of time they had. And he was astonished. The guys around me were my peers, so they were irritated competitively. But he was astonished. How the hell did you do that? And I told him it's not an accident. I wrote a 250-page book on it when I was an undergraduate at MIT. I studied the best people I could find, Harvard, MIT, Radcliff, and Wellesley. This is how they thought better than I did then. And I learned their methods, and I teach it now to my students. And all of my work is based on a set of tools for allowing you to work at levels of detail and specificity and diversity far beyond, and comprehensiveness far beyond the tools that ordinary Harvard, MIT teaches. I just blow, like a hurricane past Stanford and Harvard grads. They just can't even begin to imagine keeping up. You ask me for some alternative theories or approaches to something, and within 10 minutes I'll have 64. In a half an hour I'll have 256. And mine will be extremely regularly and comprehensively distributed and extremely specific and focused, and cover far more diversity than anybody else's list will have. Other people's lists will be more local and more clumped and more localized and bigoted by unconscious patterns within them. I use these abstract models to go beyond my natural thinking tendencies. Actually, I have hundreds of these that I've been working with for years, and so many of these hundreds are in my brain now memorized. And so if you wanted 64 cognitive technologies, blah, 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 I ranked them up. If you want 64 processes, functions of any society, I've got those, blah, 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 blah. If you want 120, the basic 120 dynamics of fundamental management dynamics, leadership dynamics from academic research of the last 20 years, I've got those 128 in my head. So, that's the approach I'm trying to talk about. That's the power of structural cognition tools, redoing all of education based on those tools, where you are applying ordinary mental operations to structured patterns, highly regularized structural patterns of ideas, rather than to just 5 or 6 ideas, as ordinary people learn in ordinary places like Harvard or MIT. I blow past, and my students blow past those Harvard, MIT guys. I like a hurricane, not like a storm. Blow past them by factors of 40 to 50 to 100.